Welcome back, everyone. This is the endless series of videos where ChatGPT breaks down all of Trump's false claims. And since we need to get through this in our own lifetime, let's not waste another moment and get straight to the point. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you enjoy this type of content, be sure to give the video a like because it really helps me out a lot and it allows this video to reach even more people. Alright, now let's get into the chat. And here we are. This is the same chat, and if you're wondering what prompt I used or whatever, you'll find it in part 1, so be sure to check that out if you missed it. Now let's get into the first claim of the day, and here it is. Those gorgeous buildings with golden towers are demolished and laying broken on their side. They're all demolished other than Kyiv. Millions of people that were living that are not with us any longer.
The country is absolutely obliterated. Millions and millions of people, including all of these great soldiers, they're dead. Those gorgeous buildings with golden towers are demolished and laying broken on their side. They're all demolished other than Kyiv. Millions of people that were living that are now not with us any longer. Most of the country is gone.
This claim is overblown and misrepresents the situation in Ukraine. While cities like Mariupol and Bakhmut have suffered catastrophic damage, the vast majority of Ukraine, including key cities such as Kyiv and Lviv, remains intact. Reports indicate that around 80% of Ukraine's territory and infrastructure is either untouched or in good condition. Cultural and historical landmarks in many areas have endured attacks, but are far from being all demolished. Restoration efforts continue to protect and rebuild what has been harmed. The statement that millions of people are not with us any longer is also inaccurate. While the war has resulted in tens of thousands of tragic deaths, including civilians and soldiers, the toll does not reach millions. Such exaggerations mislead audiences and fail to reflect the true scale of the conflict. Trump supporters might argue that he used hyperbole to highlight the war's severity. However, these claims undermine Ukraine's resilience and distort the reality of its ongoing struggles. Well, the more I think about it, the more clear it gets. Trump knows absolutely nothing about the region. Oh, and since we're on this topic, I've got an entire video where ChatGPT breaks down Trump's so-called peace plan for Ukraine and even comes up with its own that is both fair and realistic. So if you missed it, be sure to check it out. Alright, this claim is false, so let's move on to the next one. Prior to the China virus, the plague that came in from China, we achieved the lowest Hispanic American unemployment rate in the history of our country.
But he betrayed the Hispanic Americans prior to the China virus, the plague that came in from China. We achieved the lowest Hispanic American unemployment rate in the history of our country.
This claim overstates Trump's role in achieving record low Hispanic unemployment. While it's true that Hispanic unemployment hit 3.9% in September of 2019, this was part of a decade-long trend that began during the Obama administration. After the Great Recession, Hispanic unemployment steadily dropped from 13% in 2009 to below 5% in 2016, well before Trump took office. His policies like tax cuts and deregulation may have contributed to ongoing growth, but they weren't the driving force behind this historic decline. Trump supporters might argue that his leadership and economic policies accelerated these gains, but the numbers tell a different story. The groundwork for this achievement was laid years earlier through recovery efforts under Obama. Claiming full credit ignores the broader context and diminishes the long-term factors that played a key role in improving employment rates for Hispanic Americans. It's misleading and oversimplified. Alright, so technically the claim is not all that false. I mean, it's just not as false as we're used to. But alright, let's move on to the next claim. I was the only president in 82 years that kept you out of a war, except I defeated ISIS, but I inherited that war. No wars.
I was the only president in 82 years that kept you out of a war, except I defeated ISIS, but I inherited that war. There are no wars.
Trump is not the only president in the past 82 years to avoid starting a new war. For example, Jimmy Carter's presidency did not see the U.S. engage in new military conflicts. While it's true that Trump did not initiate any new wars, his administration continued and, in some cases, escalated existing military operations, including increased drone strikes and airstrikes in countries like Yemen, Somalia, and Syria. Additionally, the U.S. remained heavily involved in conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq during his tenure. Trump supporters might argue that his approach to foreign policy reduced the likelihood of large-scale military engagements, emphasizing diplomacy and troop withdrawals. However, the claim of no wars oversimplifies and ignores the ongoing military actions and conflicts inherited or maintained during his term. It's an exaggeration designed to enhance his record, while overlooking historical and factual nuances. Alright, this claim isn't true either, and Trump wasn't the only one. Alright, now let's move on to the next false claim. In 2009, pre-Hillary, ISIS was not even on the map.
In 2009, pre-Hillary, ISIS was not even on the map.
While ISIS as we know it today did not formally exist under that name in 2009, its roots can be traced to Al-Qaeda in Iraq, or AQI, which had been active since the early 2000s. By 2006, AQI rebranded as the Islamic State of Iraq, a precursor to ISIS. The group was already building the infrastructure and networks that would later allow it to expand into Syria and become ISIS under Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's leadership in 2010. Trump supporters might argue that ISIS's dramatic rise to power occurred during Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State, implying her politics facilitated its growth. While it is true that the group gained significant ground after 2009, the claim erases the complex history and earlier origins of ISIS, making it a simplistic and misleading assertion. Got it. It's mostly an oversimplification, but yeah, it could also be seen as a false claim. Alright, let's move on to the next one. We took 100% of the caliphate. 100%. Everybody says it. Everybody. So it's not like, oh gee, Obama did it. I did it.
We took 100% of the caliphate. 100%. Everybody says it, everybody. So it's not like, oh gee, Obama did it. I did it.
While Trump's administration oversaw the territorial defeat of ISIS's caliphate in Syria and Iraq, the groundwork for this outcome was largely established during the Obama administration. The US-led coalition began its campaign against ISIS in 2014 under Obama with strategic airstrikes, support for Kurdish forces, and extensive planning. Trump continued these efforts and escalated military actions, but to say Obama did nothing disregards the significant process made before Trump took office. Trump supporters might argue that his administration's more aggressive approach accelerated the defeat of ISIS and demonstrated stronger leadership. However, while territorial control was taken from ISIS, the group remains active in smaller cells and continues to conduct attacks. Claiming 100% defeat ignores the ongoing threat posed by ISIS and the contributions of prior strategies, making this statement not only false, but a deliberate effort to minimize others' contributions for personal credit. Again, ISIS, and again, Obama. Alright, let's not waste any time and move on to the next claim, where hopefully it's not about ISIS this time. And here it is. We have record numbers of companies coming back in. They're coming back.
Now it's coming back hundreds of millions of dollars at a clip. And also companies are coming back to our country. We have record numbers of companies coming back in. They're coming back, they're pouring back in. And they're going to Michigan and they're going to Ohio and Pennsylvania and so many different states. And people can't believe what's happening. We're really doing well.
While Trump frequently claimed that his policies were driving a return of companies to the U.S., the reality is far more nuanced. Some companies did announce investments during his term, but the overall trend of reshoring manufacturing jobs was not as dramatic as Trump portrayed. According to data from the Reshoring Initiative, the rate of manufacturing jobs returning to the U.S. was modest and did not reach record numbers as Trump claimed. Supporters might argue that Trump's tax cuts and deregulatory efforts created a more favorable business climate, which could have incentivized companies to return. However, many of the investments he touted were expansions of existing facilities or projects announced before he took office. Furthermore, high-profile closures like General Motors plants in Ohio and Michigan highlight the incomplete narrative. This claim overstates reality to bolster his economic track record. Good, another Trumpification in action. Not much to say here, so let's get on to the next claim. They deleted and destroyed all evidence of that they found. You know why? Because Nancy Pelosi was guilty. Nancy Pelosi turned down 10,000 troops.
They deleted and destroyed all evidence of that they found. You know why? Because Nancy Pelosi was guilty. Nancy Pelosi turned down 10,000 troops. You wouldn't have had a J6 because other people were guilty.
The January 6 committee's records have not been destroyed. They're archived with the National Archives, ensuring transparency and accountability. Furthermore, Nancy Pelosi did not turn down 10,000 troops. Deployment of National Guard troops is a decision made by the President and the Department of Defense, not the Speaker of the House. There's no record of Trump issuing a formal order for 10,000 troops prior to January 6, despite his repeated claims. Some Trump supporters might defend this statement as part of a broader critique of Pelosi's leadership, but even they struggle to justify these baseless accusations. The absence of evidence to support this claim leaves little room for credible defense. This is a calculated lie aimed at shifting responsibility for the events of January 6th and smearing political opponents without factual support. Okay, so Nancy Pelosi did not turn down 10,000 troops. Got it. Oh, and by the way, I've got a video where I asked ChatGPT whether the 2020 election was rigged and covered January 6th as well. It's already up on the channel, so feel free to check it out at any time. But for now, let's move on to the next claim, and here it is. If you build a car in the United States, you can't sell it in Europe. You just can't sell it. It's impossible.
And yet, if you build a car in the United States, you can't sell it in Europe. You just can't sell it. It's impossible.
American cars can be sold in Europe, provided they meet the European Union's regulations and safety standards. While it's true that the EU enforces strict standards, many US manufacturers adapt their vehicles to comply. Brands like Ford, Tesla, and Jeep have successfully sold vehicles in Europe for years. The statement that it's impossible to sell US-built cars in Europe is a blatant exaggeration. Trump supporters might argue he was highlighting the challenges US companies face due to European regulations, suggesting the EU creates a less favorable environment for American products. However, this does not justify the claim that American cars cannot be sold there. It's misleading rhetoric, not an accurate reflection of trade realities. Well, what a weird claim, and of course it's entirely false. Alright, we've got a couple more claims to go, and we'll get into those in just a moment, but before we do, here's a quick reminder. If you're enjoying this video, hit that like button right now, and if you don't want to miss out on any of the weekly videos I publish, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because it's the best way to let YouTube know that you love these videos and that you want more of them. And also, if you missed the previous parts of Trump's false claims, I've linked the playlist in the description and the pinned comment, so be sure to check those out too. Alright, now let's move on. Let's see what the next claim is all about. And here it is. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
This claim is false and has been directly refuted by Springfield's city manager, who stated there is no evidence or reports supporting such an accusation. There are no verified records, police reports, or credible witnesses corroborating the idea that migrants have harmed or eaten pets in the city. The claim seems to rely entirely on unverified anecdotes, often spread through social media or partisan outlets, rather than any substantiated facts. Such allegations have been repeatedly debunked when scrutinized, making them an unreliable and misleading narrative. Trump supporters might argue that there are interviews or statements from individuals complaining about incidents involving migrants, using these as supposed proof. However, these isolated and unverified claims do not hold up under investigation. Such rhetoric not only misrepresents reality but unfairly vilifies migrant communities, creating unnecessary fear and hostility toward people who are often fleeing difficult circumstances. Now, I don't know about you, but I remember this claim word for word. Alright, the definition of a false claim fits perfectly here, but now let's check out the last one for today, and here it is. The United States has among the lowest case fatality rates of any major country in the world. The European Union's case fatality rate is nearly 3 times higher than ours.
The United States has among the lowest case fatality rates of any major country anywhere in the world. The European Union's case fatality rate is nearly 3 times higher than ours, but you don't hear that. They don't write about that. They don't want to write about that. They don't want you to know those things.
While the US did have a relatively lower case fatality rate, CFR, compared to some European nations like Italy or the UK, it was far from being among the lowest globally. Countries such as Germany, South Korea, and Japan had significantly lower CFRs. The assertion that the European Union CFR was nearly 3 times higher is also an exaggeration. At the time, the EU's average CFR was higher than the US, but not by that extreme margin. The claim simplifies complex statistics and omits context, such as differing healthcare systems, demographics, and testing strategies, which heavily influence CFR comparisons. Trump supporters might argue that the US's robust testing system played a role in identifying more cases and therefore lowering the calculated CFR. While testing does influence CFR, the overall per capita death rate, a more critical metric, painted a much grimmer picture for the US, undermining this claim's validity. Alright, well, let's not torment ChatGPT any further, and we'll wrap it up right here. As always, let me know in the comments if any of these claims were new to you, or if you think that some of them are not actually false. And after that, click on this playlist to check out the other parts if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, click on that pop-up, and I'll be waiting for you there in a moment.